So welcome back to the subject nationalism and patriotism. And in this video, the focus is on the factors contributory to Filipino nationalism. Once again, this is your lecturer, Darlito Bernard Gidalizo, your Sir D or Tatay D. Well, again, the Bible says about leaders, a ruler who lacks understanding is a cruel oppressor, but he who hates unjust gain will prolong his days, as said in Proverbs chapter 28, verse 16. So dito, maintindihan natin na ang isang leader na nagkukulan na ng kalaman patungkol sa kanyang sinasakupan ay nahalin tulad siya sa isang cruel oppressor, no? At ang sino man na galit sa corruption, galit sa panlilinlang ay hahabang kanyang buhay or habang kanyang panahon. Meaning, okay, siya ay maitatatag ng matagal sa kanyang kinaupuan. No? On the other hand, Benjamin Franklin of the United States of America, he said that rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Meaning, kapag ang mga namumuno ay sila ay umaabuso na sa kanilang kapangyarihan, ay nararapat lamang, sabi niya, na you go against them. At when you go against the tyrants, Franklin said that it is tantamount to obedience to God. So somehow, ganun din siguro ang nangyari nung panahon ng mga Filipino during the Spanish colonization of our country. Nasabi nila umaabuso na yung mga Spanish, no? Nagiging tyrants na sila. So yung ating pag-aaklas against them ay may tuturing na ating pagsunod sa Panginoon. Okay, so with that, in the Philippines, we go back again. So mga social classes natin during this Spanish colonization. Just a review so that you will understand, also that we will understand the factors giving rise to Filipino nationalism. Okay, so who are these peninsularis? The peninsularis, they are considered as the highest class in the society, and they were entrusted with the offices of high rank, like the governor general, high-ranking, we call it high-ranking positions in the government. And again, they were pure-blooded Spaniards born from Spain, or they were born in Spain and some parts in Europe. And they were sent by the King of Spain to their colonies to govern. Okay? And of course, during those times, the Philippines was not the only country colonized by Spain. So most of the Latin American countries were practically under the regime of the Spanish. And those who were born in Spain or in Europe, the pure-blooded, they were sent to those colonies to govern them. And because of that, they were awarded with great favors and large quantities of land. So meaning, sila yung mga pinakamayaman sa mga lugar na kanilang pinupuntahan. No? Yun ang kanilang award. No? And who are those people? No? And of course, the most well-known to the Filipinos was Miguel Lopez de Legazpi, who colonized a huge part of the Philippines. Okay? Colonized a huge part, meaning nakita nila na from Cebu, marami palang mga other islands sa Pilipinas. So they started colonizing one island, okay, hanggang sa nakarating sila ng mainland Luzon. And another peninsularis during the Spanish regime who was well known to the Filipinos was Ramon Blanco y Arenas, the Governor General during the time of Rizal and the Katipunan. And he was too nice to the Filipinos. Na? However, he was accused of being too conciliatory, meaning masyado niyang kumbaga nakikipagkaibigan sa mga Filipinos. And eventually, he was removed. Kasi somehow, during his time, medyo maganda-ganda ng konti yung katayuan ng mga Filipino because of the policies of Ramon Blanco Arenas. What about the insularis? Again, the Crolius or the insularis, they were Europeans or mostly Spanish, okay, who were born in the colonies such as in the country, in the Philippines. Okay, and while they were here, of course, they were considered as lower to the peninsularis because as we mentioned no sa mga nakaraang video natin na sila ay kumbaga mga anak ng mga tawag natin mga anak ng mga tinapon lamang sa Pilipinas. Hindi peninsularis kundi yung mga tinapon. Okay? And most of the insularis or some of the insularis and Crolius, they intermarried with Filipinos and other races, no? Just like the Spanish, okay, and the Japanese and the locals, the Filipinos, the Indios, producing the mestizos. And because of their European, we call it blood, they enjoy various government in charge positions. Then later on, naging mga kapitalista na sila, mga businessmen. Okay? At nagkaroon sila ng napakaraming lupain. And again, one of the foremost insularis during the Spanish time was Luis Rodriguez Varela, also known as El Conde. Okay? He was actually a true European noble but championed the rights of the Filipinos. Meaning, siya ay European, ano? Siya ay kumbaga hindi siya mistiso, however, pinaglalaban niya ang karapatan ng mga Filipino. Kaya siya ay naging um, kilala sa Pilipinas nung panahon na yan, particularly in Manila. And of course, the principalias were the noble class. The ruling and usually educated upper class in the pueblos. Pag mga sinasabi natin mga pueblos, yan yung mga municipalities, mga cities. Na? Sila tinatawag na gobernadorcillo, mga little governors because they govern the municipios or the municipalities, yung mga town. Kaya tawag sa kanila, kapitan municipal. Okay? And they were the lieutenants of justice, meaning sila yung mga nag-assist sa mga kumbaga pagbibigay ng hustisya or sa mga husgado. And of course, part of those, by the way, the lieutenant of justice, sila yung mga vice mayors, kumbaga, no? Just like in the country today, yung mga vice mayors, sila yung mga, kumbaga, sila yung mga heads na mga municipal councils. Okay? Ayan. So sila pwede sila magbigay ng mga magagawa ng mga batas at the same time pwede rin sila magkaroon ng mga trials so like that, okay? And of course, part of the noble class during those times were the cabezas de barangays or the heads of the barangays. And of course, part of the principalias were the former gobernadorcillos or municipal captains and municipal lieutenants in good standing during their term of office. So of course, to them, hati rin sila. May mga iba na sip-sip sa Spanish, but meron din sa kanila na tawag natin tumutulong din upang ipaglaban ang karapatan ng mga Filipino. And again, the bourgeoisie, okay, the bourgeoisie, they became the new middle class. Okay? Yung mga ama ay mga bourgeoisie at ang kanilang mga anak ay mga ilustrados. Those who were enlightened. Sila yung mga nakapag-aral, okay, napunta sa iba't ibang lugar, okay, and they were very idealist kasi they were in between. Nakita nila yung discrepancy ng buhay between sa mga Espanyol, sa mga mayayaman at sa mga tawag natin nakakasalamuhan nila. So they became very idealists, they were artists and free thinkers. And again, they were born of wealthy landowners. So expect na nakakasalamuhan nila yung mga mas mababang mga Filipino sa panahon nila. But of course, hindi lahat ng mga ilustrados na nakapag-aral ay mga mayaman. There were some, like Apolinario Mabini, who was from a family of farmers. So may mga mangilan-ilan din sa panahon nila. But of course, the foremost or the most well-known among them was Apolinario Mabini. Okay, and because of the ideas of these ilustrados, okay, they awakened the Filipino nationalism. And or during the time of Carlos de la Torre, okay, when de la Torre became the governor, somehow the ilustrados got the chance to manifest their political will. Okay, and they tried now to invoke reforms in the government. Okay, but of course, history will tell us na hindi lahat yon ay pinakinggan ng mga Espanyol or ng Spanish government. Okay, kasi kapag pinakinggan nila yon, mawawalan ng pribilehiyo at enjoyment yung mga principalias, mga peninsularis, no? Okay, at mga crulios na pro sa Spanish government, so mawawalan sila, no, ng mga enjoyment o mga privileges at madadagdagan yung privileges ng mga Indios, ng mga ilustrados, and of course their apprehension na eventually it will cause their we call it removal, no, from their positions in the government. Okay, so with that, what are the factors that somehow ignited, or meaning it helped to ignite the Filipino nationalism? Well, first thing first, the opening of the Suez Canal. Okay? So, bakit ito importante? Okay? So, the Suez Canal, it was built by Ferdinand de Lesseps, and it made now the Philippines closer to the world trade and communication travel. So, the canal is 103 miles long and connects the Red Sea and Mediterranean Sea. So, ano yon? Okay? So, ito ang appearance ng tawag natin ng Suez Canal. Looking at the Google map, okay, you have the Indian Ocean down below. Ayan. Okay. So, itong Indian Ocean na ito, look at the map. Ayan. So, these are Spain. Okay. So, nandito nang gagaling yung mga tawag natin yung mga Espanyol, ano? The colonizers. And of course, France, Italy, no? Dito nag-aaral yung mga Filipino. So, take note, if this is the Philippines, malayo yung biyahe nila. Okay? So, iikot pa sila at very risky mag-travel sa Indian Ocean, okay, between Madagascar, Mozambique, and then down below. So, mahaba-haba yung biyahe and very dangerous sa Atlantic Ocean. Okay? Kumbaga dito sa atin sa Philippines, sa Pacific Ocean, ay yung mga typhoon. Dito naman, mga cyclone dito. Okay, so nandito yung Suez Canal, yung Egypt. This is the Mediterranean Sea. Okay? So, kinat dito sa area na yan. Yan. Okay. Ayan. So, nagkaroon ng shortcut. So, sa pagkaroon ng shortcut, napaigsi yung traveling na mga Espanyol papunta sa Pilipinas. Ganon din napaigsi rin yung mga Filipinos or ilustrados yung kanilang gastusin to travel from the Philippines going to Europe. And of course, mas napabilis ang communication, meaning nalalaman kaagad ng mga Filipinos ang nangyayari sa Europa, yung pagkaroon ng French Revolution and other revolutions in other places, that somehow, sabi nila, kung kaya nila doon ay kakayanin din natin. Okay? So that is the, we call it the Suez Canal, no? Located in Egypt. Ayan. Okay? So, that's it, no? So, we go back. Now, because of that, again, sabi nga natin, napaigsi na, no? Mas mabilis na magbiyahe yung mga Europeans and Filipinos. Mabilis yung pagdating ng balita sa Pilipinas. Okay? At mas namulat yung mga Filipino na sila nga ay kinakawawa and kailangan ay maging magkaisa sila upang magkaroon ng isang Pilipinas. So number 2, the spread of liberalism. So the liberalism, ito yung kaisipan na they are no longer under the control of the church, okay, and under the control of one government. Okay. So again, the liberal ideas from Europe filtered in, nakapasok na sa Pilipinas, and some thoughts of famous political philosophers in Europe were made known through books and periodicals brought into the country by men from foreign ports. And number 3, the improvement in communication and transportation facilities brought Filipinos closer and made them realize their common predicament. Okay? So yun nga, no, yung na-improve lalo ang communication, no, mga radios, no, mas madali nilang nakarating ang balita sa Hong Kong like that, and then to the Philippines. Okay? At nakita nga nila na sabi, ito yung ating predicament, kinakawawa tayo. Kailangan ng pagbabago. So in number 4, the Principalia were able to send their children to schools and even to schools in Spain. Okay, remember the Principalias, ito yung mga karamihan dyan, mga mestizo rin yan. Okay? So sila yung mga namumuno as mayors, as vice mayors, as head of the barangays. Okay? So eventually, napadali nila yung kanilang mga anak sa Europa, no? And of course, in Spain also. So nakikita-kita sila doon, nakikita nila yung mga enjoyment ng mga Europeans as a free country, okay? Free from any, we call it governance of foreign countries. So somehow, yun ang nag-lead ng, kumbaga sa mga tao ito para propaganda sa Pilipinas upang gisingin ang pagiging nasyonalismo ng Filipino. Because as we mentioned in the previous videos, ang mga Pilipino hindi nagkakaisa because somehow they were probably they were divided as to their language, no? Because we know that in the Philippines ito ay multi-lingual ang ating bansa. Maraming dialect, multi-dialect tayo. So di natin maiwasan that even during our time, in our time, no, ay makita natin na minsan may pagkahati-hati ang mga Kapampangan, mga Ilocano, mga Tagalog, no, mga Bisaya. So more or less may mga ganun pa rin na until now. So, but of course, during the propaganda movement, at least ay na-realize nila that in spite of the dialect barriers ay isa sila, no, na mga Filipino, or isa sila na isang pinagmulan na yung Malay race, and they have their common culture and traditions. And of course, in number 5 factor, the rise of the new middle class, no, the bourgeoisie, okay, the ilustrados. So in 1830, Spain opened the ports of Manila to the world, and of course, and other ports in the Philippines. So because of the opening of that, okay, so mas marami ang nakarating sa Pilipinas, at mas marami rin ang mga Chinese and Spanish mestizos na naging mga middle class, no? Naging kapitalista, naging mga landowners, okay? So mas nagkaroon sila ng financial capability to perhaps buy their armaments, no? And to we call it to support financially the propaganda movement, okay? So mas marami ng mga Filipino at mga mestizo na naging middle class, may kakayahan. So mas nagkaroon sila ng feeling na sila ay kaya na nila, they're capable of we call it governing their own land, or our country, and we call it and overthrowing the Spaniards. So kaya karamihan sa mga national heroes natin or sa mga propagandist natin, okay, karamihan sa kanila mga ilustrado, mga mestizo, no? Okay, and of course, the sentiments against the principales, no, yung mga namumuno. So kinokontra na nila kasi marami sa kanila ay nagiging mas pabor sila sa Spanish government. As I've mentioned earlier, na kumbaga kung sila ay mas pabor sa Spanish government, mas na-enjoy nila yung privileges nila. Mas maraming mga batas na nagagawa in favor to them. Okay? And of course, with that, ang tingin din nila sa mga Indios ay mga mas mababa, mga uri ng mga tao. So somehow nagkaroon ng predicament or nagkaroon ng sentiments against them. Okay? And so the masses had been skeptical about the local aristocracy due to their proportion of influence in the society. Meaning, mas sila ang nagko-control na sa society, itong mga mayayaman na ito. Okay? So nagkaroon ng tinatawag na aristocracy, ito yung governance of the few, or yung mga mayayaman at mga elite, no, sa society. Okay? So hindi sila mismo na, probably sila mismo yung mga gobernadors or mga gobernadorcillos, but rather yung kanilang influence, okay, affected yung governance. Okay? And just like in the country today, there is what you call a shadow aristocracy, because the influence of the wealthy, okay, to our government ay nangyayari. Kaya nagagawa nila yung mga nais nilang gawin sa Pilipinas. So same thing, no? Yun ang nangyari nung panahon ng mga Espanyol. And of course, ito yung isang factor, yung racial prejudice, because the Filipinos were regarded as Indios, because Indios in other European countries or European colonies, na ay talagang sila yung mga mababang tao, no? Sila yung mga slaves. So ganun din ang conception ng mga nandito na mga European and Spanish na namumuno sa Pilipinas. And their notion is that mga Filipino yan, mga mababang uring mga tao. So they could not rise beyond their limited intelligence. Mga bobo yan. Okay? So because of that, of course, na-instigate lalo. Okay? Yung mga enlightened Filipinos or yung mga ilustrados na no. Parehas lang tayo. No? That's why Jose Rizal, pinakita niya no, how good he was intellectually. So he could he was able to speak different languages. No? Kaya believe sila sa katalino niya. Kaya sabi ng mga ilustrados, no, hindi tayo mga Indios. No? Meron tayong pag-asa na aangat. Okay? And of course, the cultural changes. So because of the educational reform in 1863, na-improve yung standard ng education. So mas maraming mga Filipino naging ilustrado. Mas marami ang naka-pursue ng higher education. And again, so the ilustrados became the new breed of Filipinos. Mga marunong alam na nila. Okay? So sila yung mga naging propagandists or mga naging supporter ng propaganda movement. And another problem occurred in the country, the secularization of the church. Ano nga ba yung secularization? Secularization is the historical process in which religion loses social and cultural significance and the role of religion in modern societies becomes restricted. No? Kumbaga, nawawala yung kanyang spiritual value, nawawala yung kanyang social value and cultural value sa Pilipinas. Nagiging kumbaga ay mas yung mga tawag natin, yung mga yung mga yung mga pare ay they started working for the interest of the government. Kasi pag sabi mong secular, ito yung mga outside we call it the government. So nagkaroon ngayon ng connivance or conspiracy between the church and the state. So nawala yung significance ng religion sa mga Filipino. Okay? So Pope Pius V in 1567 issued the Exponi Nobis, allowing the regular clergy to serve as parish priests without diocesan authorization and be exempted from bishop's authority. Meaning, pwede nang gawin ng mga pari yung kanilang gawin, yung mga local priests, no? Di na sila nakokontrol ng bishop. Okay? So basically, yung mga lumaban sa secularization included Fathers Pedro Pilaes, Jose Burgos, Mariano Gomez, and Jacinto Zamora. Okay? And they were accused of treason and were tried in an unfair trial and were sentenced to death by Garote on February 17, 1872 in Bagumbayan. Okay? Yan yung pinakasentro ng death penalty, execution ng panahon na yan. Okay? Kasi nga, kinokontra na nila yung kumbaga parang naging worldly yung church. Okay? So that's the idea. Nagkaroon ng secularization of the church. So parang yung mga pare ay nakikisawsaw na rin sa politika during that time na wawala yung significance nila sa mga Filipino in matters of religion. Okay, and finally, the Cavite Mutiny. Okay, nag-aklas yung mga sundalo, mga Filipinong sundalo, mga Guardia Civils, no? Okay, the Governor General Rafael de Izquierdo replaced Governor de la Torre, and de la Torre discarded the liberal measures. Yan. And he abolished the privileges of arsenal workers and engineer corps regarding exemption from tribute and forced labor. Yung tribute kasi na yan, yung mga taxes. Yung forced labor, magtatrabaho sila sa mga na walang sweldo, mga hard labor. So tinanggal ni De La Torre. Kaya sabi na, bakit ganon? Ito nga lang sana yung aming privileges bilang nagserve sa government of Spain. So with that, ay nagkaroon ng mutiny. Okay? So they went against the Spanish government. But of course, natalo sila. And because of that, it led to the we call it to the yung kumbaga kaisipan na GOM-BUR-ZA or the Father Gomez, Burgos and Zamora. Well, maaring sabi nila may kinalaman ito, mga taong ito. And of course, other reasons, no, na execute si Father Gomez, Father Burgos, and Zamora. So because of their execution, mas napabilis yung tawag natin, yung paglago ng Filipino nationalism. And eventually, of course, nag-lead na yan sa tinatawag nating armed revolution by the Katipunan. Okay? So, as the concluding thoughts, what are the demands of the Filipinos? So, basically, nung una, demand lamang yung kanilang hinihingi. May mga demand lang sila. They were not actually asking for an independence actually. Okay? Ang nais lamang nila magkaroon ng equality of Filipinos and Spaniards before the law. Hindi yung mga principalias, hindi yung mga Creoles, no? Or yung mga peninsulares, hindi sila mga nag-enjoy. Okay? Just like in the history of criminology, during the classical period, so yun ang kumbaga pinoint out ni na Vicaria at Jeremy Bentham that somehow the laws of the land or the laws during the classical period favors the wealthy people, the rich, the aristocrats, okay, and the bureaucrats, okay, and the we call it the oligarchs, no? Kaya ganun din ang nangyayari sa Pilipinas. So gusto nila na sana hindi ganun, no? Just like what happened in Europe. Okay, kasi yun ang pinaglaban ng Europa earlier on in the 1600s and 1700s. Okay? Kaya in 1800s, sabi ng Filipino, just like what happened in Europe, nagkaroon ng equality. Okay? Na mga tao in the eyes of the law. And of course, they were not asking actually for independence, but rather, gawin nyo kaming regular na probinsya. Regular na probinsya so that we enjoy also the privileges of those people, okay, in the other regular provinces of Spain. And sabi nila, tinanggal kasi yung pinakang congressman ng Filipino sa Spanish Cortes or the Spanish Parliament. Sabi na, i-restore para may magre-represent sa amin. And they were fighting for the Filipinization of the parishes, meaning dapat mga Filipino na mga pari at dapat sa wikang Filipino or sa wikang Tagalog or sa dialect. Okay, yung mga misa, so mas naintindihan yung mga tao. And of course, yung human rights for Filipinos like right to property, right to life and liberty like that. Now, ito lamang yung kanilang mga kumbaga demand ng panahon na yan. Okay? But of course, sabi nga natin, hindi na pagbigyan. So eventually, it led to the armed revolution. At yung nationalism naging patriotism na kasi nga lumaban ng mga Filipino dyan. Okay? So with that, once again, thank you for listening and watching. Okay, God bless you all.